going to begin with a pork roast here. Now, this is a European style pork roast. There's a lot more marbling and fat in this than you usually find in the American product, because European pigs haven't been bred to be super low fat the way that the American ones have. So we got a couple of extra little pieces. We got flap here we're going to get rid of. Obviously this big piece here, and we got some rough edge here we're going to trim off and butcher it up so that it's a nice even smooth piece. Okay, that was easy. Only take a few seconds there to do that. Now we got some scraps here. What are we going to do with that? Well, you can grind it up and make it into ground pork, or you can do all sorts of different things with it, but that's another time. So we've got this nice even piece now. We're going to sprinkle some coarse salt on it, quite a lot. Again, more than you would think that you would want to put, but this is a big thick piece of meat, and most of it's going to get lost in the pan anyway. So once it's nicely salted, we're going to brown this in the bottom of a pressure cooker. Now for the fat that's going to be used to brown this, I'm using this few pieces, about 2 strips of Hungarian smoked bacon. This is a wonderful product that we can get in Russia. You can use any smoked bacon you like. This one's very nice, but there's other bacons that are available other places that are also just as good. Once the bacon's rendered a good amount of fat, then it can start browning the meat. This is not quite enough fat for this, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more olive oil to it, just to make sure that there's enough oil in the bottom of that pan that the meat won't stick to it. This will take a few minutes to brown. You want to brown on all sides. Sure to get all the sides. And some of the bacon sticks to the pork, just knock it back down to the bottom of the pan. Don't worry about the bacon burning much, because the temperature of the pork, the cold pork, will keep the pan from getting so hot that the bacon actually starts to burn. So you can see we've got some real good caramelization going on here. That's, again, the secret of flavor. You want it to be deep brown before you move on. Okay, we've got some real good caramelization here. That's enough. We're going to remove this to a plate. In the same hot pan, we're going to add our onions and carrots. We're going to let these cook down for a few minutes. Reduce the heat just a little bit to medium. Okay, vegetables have been softened. That bacon is very, very, very close to burnt. It's not burnt, but boy, is it right on the edge. And that's okay. That's going to help the flavor in the end. Don't worry about that. As long as it's not actually burnt, you don't have anything to worry about. Now I'm going to deglaze the pan with about 1.5 ounces of balsamic vinegar. We're going to cook that down until it's kind of dry again. We're going to let all of that liquid evaporate before we continue on. Okay, the liquid is mostly gone. It's quite thick and starting to turn gummy. It's not burning, which is important. So we're going to go ahead and add the meat back to the pan now, along with some bay leaves, some celery leaves, and a couple of cups, about 500 milliliters of good chicken stock. And finally, about a teaspoon of whole black peppercorns. We're going to bring this up to a boil first, and then we're going to put the lid on it and begin pressure cooking it. Okay, we've got some bubbling going on now. I'm going to add the garlic to it and put the lid on it. Let it cook away. Lower the heat down just a little bit once the steam starts coming, and let it go. Okay, the first 30 minutes has passed. We're going to crack the lid on this and see what it looks like. Maybe turn the meat over. Looking good. And we're going to flip it. Put the lid back on and continue the pressure cooking. Okay, it's been another 30 minutes. We're going to let this fan again. And check it out. Flip it over one more time. And give it the final 30 minutes here under pressure. Okay, the next 30 minutes has gone by. I'm going to kill the heat and I'm going to leave this under pressure to cool down till it's almost room temperature. This is one of the secrets to pressure cooking that you rarely see on television shows and in books. It needs to reabsorb all these liquids as it cools down, and the best way to do that is to just leave it in the pressure cooker. Let it cool down with the pressure on it. Okay, the meat's out. Now what we're going to do is make a nice neat parcel with this by wrapping it tightly in plastic wrap. And that's it. A nice tight roll. And we're going to refrigerate this for at least a few hours, and in this case I'm actually going to refrigerate it till tomorrow. It'll take care of it then. And of course we don't want to forget about these pan juices. I'm going to strain these off. Okay, this is the next day. We've got our meat in a very nice tight, completely cold package. Now what we're going to do is brush the outside of this with a mixture of mayonnaise and mustard. Now I'm using half mayonnaise because I'm using very, very strong Russian mustard. If you were using a typical mustard, don't use Dijon by the way, if you're using a typical mustard, you wouldn't need an English mustard, you wouldn't need the mayonnaise because it's not that strong. But Russian mustard is extremely powerful. It's too powerful. It'll overwhelm everything else that's going on here. That's it. We got a coating going around it. Now what we're going to do is wrap some strips of bacon around this. We're going to have to stretch it just a little bit to make the bacon reach. But it's not too difficult. Like that, and we keep going, overlapping the bacon until you've covered the whole outside. Okay, put some plastic film down on the board, and I got a couple of sheets here of puff pastry. And I'm going to need both sheets because unfortunately these are already cut. If I'd been making this specifically for this dish, I would have rolled them out a little bit longer, but we're going to coat that with some egg. Put this in there, and we're going to seal it just by pushing a fork down on it. And when this cooks, this will be just fine. The seam will be on the bottom side, so you really won't see it, and it becomes one piece. Now we take our meat that's been wrapped in the bacon, and we start to fold up this around it, and you want to get it tight. After you get it together, you're gonna pack this tight, and then you're gonna put it back in the refrigerator. And there you have it. Now, how you fold the ends in really doesn't make any difference because when this is done cooking, you're going to cut off the ends anyway. So if the ends are not even or they're too buttery, it won't make any difference. Now, this goes back in, if you're in a hurry, you can put this in the freezer for about 20 minutes, but really you're better off sticking it in for about 30 minutes. Okay, it's been in the freezer for just under 30 minutes, and I'm going to take the shrink wrap off of it here, plastic film off of it, and now it's up to you. You don't have to do this, but you can give it the beef Wellington touch if you want to, just by running your knife along it. This gives it a nice little decorative finish, but it really doesn't make any difference. You can get really fancy and save some other pieces of the pastry and put it on top of it and make little decorations, little flowers and rosettes if you want to get really elaborate. So, into a pan, the oven's preheated now to 200 degrees. I'm going to brush this with egg yolk. Notice this is egg yolk, not just entire whole egg, because if you do that, the surface won't be nice and brown. You want to use just the yolk. Good. Now I'm using some smoked salt here on top of it. Get a nice crusty finish. And that's it. I'm going to pop it in the oven, 200 degrees. And here's what it looks like when it first comes out of the oven. We're going to let it rest for at least 15 minutes before we try to slice it and trim it up. And while that's resting, we have our cooking fluid that we strained, braising fluid that we strained yesterday and let sit in the refrigerator overnight. And you get all the fat floats to the top, so it's very easy just to skim it off, get rid of that. And we're going to put it in a pan, start reducing it and making it thick to make the sauce. But first you want to get rid of all this extra fat, because that won't be tasty. Okay, the sauce is pretty thick now, so we're going to move that off the heat and turn our attention to the meat. Now this has got kind of an ugly side here, but that's not a problem. This is extra anyway. We're just going to cut that off, and that won't be part of it. The rest of it, we'll put a couple of slices down on the plate, spoon a little more of the sauce over the top of it, put some in a gravy boat along the side, and you're all ready. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.